So ask yourself this question: is your enterprise ready for change? Most of you should answer no. And if that is the case, you want to listen to this. Welcome. I'm Tom Doorley of Sage Partners. I'll be your host today. My guest today, as we explore this idea of change and change readiness, is John Hansen. John Hansen is my Sage Partners, and he comes from us with a varied career. Southeast Asia with Booz Allen Hamilton, most recently in the FSI practice for Ernst & Young, or E&Y, I guess I should say, right, John? And formerly, because he likes to give back to the community, an adjunct professor at Golden Gate University, where he taught a course in strategy. And it makes sense, because John has spent his career at the intersection of strategy and implementation, what to do and how you get it done. Welcome, John.
Great. Thanks for the introduction, Tom. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Okay, so on this question of change readiness, tell us, what is the problem we're trying to solve here? What are we trying to do when we speak to the question of change and change readiness?
Right. The real problem is that organizational change and personal change are both complex and difficult, right? In our last, one of our previous podcasts, our colleague Larry Bennigsen talked about the leader's change agenda, and that had many moving parts. So when you have that and you have built-in resistance to change, people and organizations have their own processes, systems, habits, behaviors. Inertia wins, and therefore we have to address change proactively in order to be successful.
I agree with that. It's just sort of not part of our nature to want to stop doing what we have been doing and doing something new. It is difficult. So let's talk about the first step. The first step is, as I found in my career working with clients, is making a case for change. You have to make sure that your organization understands that, yeah, there's a reason why we're going to go through this sometimes difficult process. So how do you make the case for change, John? What does it look like in your eyes?
You're exactly right, Tom. Making a strong case for change is critical at the outset of a major change project or program. And it really it has to answer a couple questions. Why are we changing, and why do we need to change now? That's first and foremost. So, for example, I worked on a team for a regional bank that was going to change their retail banking system from all operations in a branch to centralizing or making hubs for those operations. And in order to get the organization understanding why we needed to do that, we benchmarked the other major banks in the region and put together a small brochure that we distributed to all the employees of the bank to help them see relatively what our cost position was against competitors, and therefore why the need to change. The second piece is perhaps more aspirational. What are we changing to, right? Change says we're moving from something to something. And so can you paint a vision of the change and make explicit what the key elements of the change are? So again, why change and why now? And what are we changing towards?
And I think that's really important first step. And we can't gloss over it. If I don't want to change, you've got to make the case that I should change. Now let's talk about readiness. And I think about readiness in a team sport analogy. It goes like this, that if you were putting your team together and your season started September 1st, you wouldn't call the players in on October 30th and say, hey guys, we got 2 days to get ready to play. You wouldn't do that. You would find some way to understand what they've been doing in the off season, what some new skills they've developed, and you'd put together a story, a program to get them ready. So that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about getting the organization, the enterprise ready for change. So let's talk about how it is we do that, John.
Sure, that's a great example, Tom, and a great segue into this topic. So we definitely believe that in order to change successfully, it helps to be proactive. And so we use a tool called the Change Readiness Assessment to try and understand some of the key elements that could be obstacles or barriers to change. And so by undertaking an assessment, organizations can address some key change readiness attributes before and during the major change effort. So that's what we're really talking about in terms of change readiness. And we have an acronym we use to describe our approach to change readiness, and that acronym is CLEAR, C-L-E-A-R. So I'll walk through, with Tom's help, some of the elements of CLEAR. So the first letter, C, is for capacity. What is the organizational capacity to change? And that really has two elements. One is, what is their bandwidth? What else is on the organization's plate and key individuals' plates? Can they continue to do business as usual? Do we need extra hands? So that's the capacity, the bandwidth issue. The other issue related to capacity is ability. Do we have the knowledge, skills, and expertise to make this change happen? And as many organizations do, they look to consultants to help with that, because consultants have scaled and done change efforts for multiple organizations. So that's the C. Do we have the capacity and the ability to change? The letter L stands for lessons learned. And similar to history, those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it. So what worked in the past, what didn't work in the past related to change efforts. And I like to use a blue ocean strategy framework, which is, what should we do more of? What should we do less of that we've learned lessons around? What should we stop doing, and what should we start doing again to make change successful?
The one that really, and we, as you continue, I find all of these elements are important. But this is the one that really resonates to me, lessons learned. We have to understand what it is we did in the past. Like you said, earlier, I talked in a previous broadcast about a Harvard Business Review article that surveyed like 3,000 people and asked them questions about the organization's ability to change. And they said, in the past, we just haven't done it very well. 70% of them said that. So if we're not going to learn the lessons, we're not going to be successful going forward. L is critically important, John. Thank you.
Yeah, indeed. So if we move to E, we talk about execution. And this has a number of key elements to highlight. One is do we have the right leadership? We've seen just in the past week, Tim Cook stepping down, for example, because he believes that what got him and Apple to where they are today requires different skills to move to the next level. So one element of execution is, do we have the right leaders? Another is, do we have executive sponsorship? Is it visible, and is it the right people? And then there are other elements of execution, right? It's around having a good implementation plan, right? Have we planned the work so that we can work the plan effectively? It's about having again, teams sequencing the work to make sure that it is executed successfully. It's about having KPIs that you're going to track, right? What are we moving towards, and making sure we're moving to that. And then probably another element, a key one, is governance or project or program management, right? Do we have decision frameworks in place? Do we have the status updates in place, et cetera? So that's execution. The fourth element, A, is for alignment. And this really gets to, are all the levers of and within the organization aligned around the change we're trying to make? So that starts with communication. And it's not only one-way communication, it is two-way communication. Do we have feedback loops so that we know what we're saying is being heard and understood? So two-way communication is important. Other key levers or elements, corporate culture, right? Is our culture aligned with the kind of organization and change we are going to make? Are our rewards and recognition systems aligned with what our new change is all about? And do we have, again, compensation aligned with that? So those are some of the things that are important as we think about the A, the alignment of the organization towards being successful at the change. And then the final letter, R, is really encapsulates everything. That is, what is our readiness to change? As we go back and assess the four elements we've just talked about, how ready do we think the organization is? What are the elements that we need to implement to address the obstacles or gaps in our change readiness assessment? So at the end of the day, in sum, we believe that organizations that are clear on their readiness for change will be much more successful in changing.
And I fully agree with that, John. And what I like about the diagnostic, the assessment that you talked about, is it's kind of like a scorecard. It says, here's where we are today in terms of being ready to change. Here's what we need to do to move on. So I've used that particular methodology in the past when I've talked about helping companies find new ways to grow and making sure that if a company hasn't grown, How do you reignite growth? Well, you need that diagnostic. We called it at the time the growth readiness diagnostic. This is the change readiness diagnostic. But it's the same thing. It is a visual portrayal of where we stand and what we need to do. John, as you look back at your past, can you talk about sort of other experiences that have seemed to work pretty well? Things that have sort of come forward in terms of really good ideas, sort of the type of the leader, the importance of communication, all those sorts of things embedded. Can you give me sort of yet another example, which I like, of how it is that has worked?
Right. I think one of the key issues is having the right team members showing as a consultant, showing your value added, because people who are skeptical at first become fans as they go through the process. So I think that's one thing. But I think also just I didn't talk about learning and development or training, and so that is critical, right? Because as people go through change, they want to know what's the change, what's in it for me, why change personally, and what can I be successful in my new job or my new role. So that's really another critical piece, is having ensuring that you do a gap analysis related to old jobs versus new jobs, and what are the new skills that we need to roll out to help people in the organization be successful.
And that's especially important now in terms of as AI comes and sort of changes everything, the importance of helping people understand the new skills that are needed. So I have kind of one little example I'd like to toss out, and it's sort of that says that when you do the first thing that John talked about, where are we going? What is our change going to look like? I had a chance 2 years ago when I first started working with Deloitte. At the time, consultants could work with their audit clients, and Starbucks was an audit client, but they were a young company, a regional coffee producer. And I had a chance to meet Howard Schultz and his team, and they talked about what Starbucks was trying to be. And he said, we want to be the third place. The first place, your home. The second place, your job. The third place, I want to be here at Starbucks, where you come and sit. Now, at the time, if you remember, there was Dunkin' Donuts and Mr. Donut and chock full of nuts. And the idea was you came, you grabbed your coffee, you got the hell out of there because you were going somewhere else. So this was a bold move, and it really, really worked. And it was brilliant. Over time, I think Starbucks kind of lost their way. We did recently some analysis of the emotional needs of customers of Starbucks, and they found out that inclusion was an important need. Fortunately, the new CEO understands that. And instead of sort of trying to be something, and by the way, over the post-COVID, Starbucks had kind of faded. They weren't doing very well. Their financial performance was poor, and now they're back at, and the reason they are is that the CEO went back and said, let's go back to the core. Let's go back to being the third place. And it is working. So as you construct the type of enterprise you want to change to, it doesn't mean you have to throw everything in the past in the wastebasket. Maybe, as was the case with Starbucks, you need to pick up on these aspects that work and reflect those that are the fundamental values. John, thank you. Any final words you'd like to give to our audience about sort of the value and the prospect of effective change?
I think it all comes down to, again, being proactive, engaging the organization, having multiple ways to communicate the change, whether it's town halls, emails, small group meetings, and as I mentioned earlier, having a way to get feedback from during those various meetings or from those various media to help understand and manage change real time going forward.
Thank you for that. In the beginning, my little introduction, I said that ask yourself the question, organizational leaders, if your organization is ready, if the enterprise is ready. And my guess is that most of you can't answer that question affirmatively. This is a process that can help you get there, can help you sort of deal with the fog of change. This is all about navigating the fog of change, which is a real challenge, but it can be done and you can get it done. But you got to work at it. Thank you, John, for your time. I appreciate it. And thank
Thanks,
you
Tom.
all for listening. Look forward to our next conversation. Until then, take care and be well. Change has never come faster or hit us harder. In the fog, leadership is the light that cuts through. I'm Tom Doorley. Thanks for joining me on our Focus on Growth, Navigating the Fog of Change series. Until the next time, keep leading forward.